New polls have come out and they are kind of devastating for the Democrats. Maybe not surprising, they did just lose the election, and everybody knows that even the Democrats don't like the Democrats these days. And yet, when you look at this is a CNN poll, so we have a few. The CNN poll has right now the Republican Party more popular than the Democratic Party. Even as more and more Republicans are like, yeah, Trump's probably gonna wreck the economy and we're probably gonna start invading a lot of other countries. They're still more popular than the Democratic Party. Now, I will say, you have to think a little bit when you see something like that. What does it actually mean? Because it's easy to see that and think, oh, well, Americans in general like the Republicans more than the Democrats, which in a certain sense is what it means. But each group is really deciding for themselves. Republicans are evaluating Republicans and Democrats. Democrats are evaluating Democrats and Republicans. And so, look, the Republicans are low, mostly because no Democrat likes the Republican these days. And there's a few Republicans that can acknowledge that their party's an absolute disaster. On the Democratic side, no Republican is gonna like the Democrats. We all understand that. But I would also say that the Democrats have a little bit more like intellectual and emotional leeway to be honest about their party. So it probably looks worse than it really is. But it's not good when the favorability rating for your party is at a 29%. But can anyone really be surprised by that? What if the Democrats, capital D, the leadership, what have they done to reassure people? At least since the election. Like maybe some people were jazzed for Harris or whatever, but since then, what have they done? They've mostly been following the James Carville, let's just play dead model. You got Chuck Schumer, chucking and Schumerin, whatever that's gonna do for you. And so can you really be surprised? Now, we should also know it is the lowest number the Democrats have gotten since CNN began polling this 30 years ago. And so you can see there, just generally trending down. I mean, there was a period in the lead up to the midterms last time around where they did spike a little bit. I mean, this only goes back 4 years. But you can see how much you can lose just in that time. That's since basically the insurrection. They've lost 20 points, or almost half of those who approved of them haven't. And I think that's a great point to start that chart at, isn't it? Because there it seemed like, oh my God, the Republicans are cooing. What are you gonna do, Democrats? And now 4 years have passed and it's like, not a ton, not really much. And people do want them to do a lot. That's clear too in the polling. So in a shift, it said, from Trump's first team, most Democratic aligned adults say the party should focus on trying to stop the GOP agenda. Now, you might have expected, well, that was probably always what it was like, but no. No, back during the first term, most wanted them to try to work with the Republicans. Now, bear in mind, most people didn't know how radical Donald Trump and the Republican Party was and how much more radical they've become. So if we're talking about some sort of philosophical divide between those who think that we should be working with Trump and those who think we should be opposing them, we can have that debate. But when you poll the people about it, they are in favor of opposition, and more so than they've ever been. That is a more popular position than anything. It's a way more popular position than the Democratic Party is. And so that's just something to bear in mind. Now we're gonna get into some more of this independence and who do the American people think the leader of the Democrats is or should be. We'll get to that, but JR, what do you think?
Yeah, really fast, because you talk about the way that maybe Republicans see Democrats or Democrats see Republicans, and maybe the people that support each party are the ones who we see these numbers from the most, and which actually makes the most sense because obviously you want support from the folks that you think will vote you in or are more jazzed about your presence. I'm not sure how many questions are asked of conservatives, MAGA, Republicans, any of these folks, and their disapproval for Democrats. What is it that they disapprove of them doing? What is it? What are they doing? Because when they're in power, it's easy. You can say, look, they're destroying the economy. The inflation's off the charts. They're letting all these illegals. Even whether or not those things are true or not, that's just the things that they say. There always has to be a clarification between what people are saying versus what's happening. You can always say the polls say this and reality says this. Especially now, polls are always showing people think. Let alone doesn't really have much to do with what is actually happening. And in this particular political climate that we're in, where Donald Trump and the MAGA party literally are fighting every day for people's outlook on their reality, what they see and think doesn't always match up with reality. So what is it that Republicans are upset with Democrats for doing? Since Donald Trump is in office, Joe Biden's gone, Kamala Harris lost. What is it that Republicans are upset about Democrats doing? I would love to see the answer to that question.
Yeah, and again, look, I know some people will be like, polls, John, you're obsessed with polls. And yes, obviously I'm obsessed with polls. There's something wrong with me. But like, we are all, again, we're in that post-election period. We're trying to learn things. These are some important things to learn. And also important signals to send. The Democrats need to see how unpopular they are. That doesn't mean they're gonna change. They have a lot of reasons, financial, not to. But we need to show them as many things as possible that are more popular than they are. And I know that can seem really abstract sometimes, but I think that we can test it out in a simple way right here. Make this video as popular as possible by hitting the like button. Make it more popular than Chuck Schumer, the Democrats. That'll send a strong signal to them. But anyway, as of right now, 19% of independents rate the Democrats favorably, 20% Republicans. So the independents are actually like more closely split than Americans at large, which sort of, I think, weeds out some of that effect I was talking about before about how Democrats and Republicans aren't necessarily as equally honest in these sorts of polls. 57% of independents say the GOP is too extreme. 48% say that of Democrats. I think both of those numbers are skewed, not enough. The GOP should be more, the Democrats. Independent, they're extreme in what regard? In what regard? They want to replace all the athletes with transes. Yeah. No, I know what you heard Jesse Waters tell you or whatever. They're extreme, come on. They literally don't do anything. Anyway, 16% of Democrats call their own party too extreme. 9% of Republicans say the same of the GOP. But that doesn't really mean anything because those in the GOP who thought that it was too extreme, they've left over the last 8 years. I mean, if you're seeing what Trump is doing, like taking a crap all over the Constitution on a daily basis and you don't find that to be extreme, then that says a little bit more about the status of the party, I think, than you might intend it to. In any event, we'll close this section with this. Who should be the leader of the Democratic Party? Because it's not Harris right now. I haven't seen Harris make a statement. I don't think. Have you guys heard Harris say anything?
I feel like it was something about being positive or make sure you know your fight or your voice still matters. Something along those lines. I saw one thing.
Look, you could go too
generic.
Far. It is. You could go too far on the other side. Like we didn't need Clinton coming out over and over and over and being like, that doesn't necessarily help anyone. But isn't it weird that like Joe Biden's off doing anything? Maybe he's asleep, I don't know. Harris isn't really saying anything. Obama isn't really saying anything. So who does that leave us with? Well, I don't necessarily mind these results. When you ask them, name someone. We're not gonna tell you who, we're not gonna prompt you. You name someone. 10% say New York Representative Alexandria Ocasio and also Cortez. It's such a bad day for John. 9% do say Kamala Harris, so she's 1 point up on the former candidate. 8% say Bernie Sanders, 6% Hakeem Jeffries, who's the literal leader, at least of some. 4% Barack Obama, who's off making Netflix documentaries. 4% say Jasmine Crockett. Schumer's at 2. I don't even know how he earned those 2, but AOC right now, AOC plus Bernie are at 18. That's not bad, you know? Maybe Democrats, you could learn a lesson here. Thanks for watching our video. Did you know that you can support our show by becoming a subscriber? Just click the subscribe button and also ring the bell so that you get notifications when we're live or when we post new content.